Welcome back to Echo Ridge. Today, we're going to be trying to clean up this entire mess and put in the bones for our Meteor collection. First, I have to give you a correction from last episode where the comments pointed out that I was wrong with my math on the water vent, and they were absolutely correct. I had forgotten to multiply that final answer times the percentage of actual eruption period. And in this case, 366 divided by 524 is 0.698. In other words, during the activity period, this vent only erupts for about 70% of the time. So I'm making this tank a little bit smaller just because I think it's a little cleaner, and it's a form of punishment for me getting the math wrong to begin with. In other fun updates, we have finished pumping out all the liquid from here, and our oil biome has been completely vacuumed out, which means it is time to get rid of all of these pipes. Oh wow, this run was going for quite some time. I will delete it from here, and then we'll be able to reactivate our gas pumps that are responsible for siphoning out all the carbon dioxide and other junk gases from our colony. And I'm going to put in one steel gas pump, connect it with an Atmos sensor, and the only thing this gas pump is going to do is take all the natural gas that is released from releasing the back pressure from the oil wells, and it's just going to help add to our natural gas fuel supply. But with those pipes gone, I think we can finally connect our water supply to the oil wells. Here comes that beautiful water now. All said and done, it's around 58 degrees, which is not too shabby at all. And as the plan, the majority of the water is just going to go to this one oil well here. Whatever's left over is going to go to this oil well, which will give us just a little bit more crude oil than we're using from the lubricating of all the bionic dupes. And at last, we have fresh crude oil. For the gas pressure in here, I figure we can start pumping it out as long as it's above, say, 300 grams of natural gas pressure. Up here, I'm finally taking care of all of this excess water, and it was from, if you remember a long time ago, this entire biome here was pretty frozen, so as the ice melted, we ended up with all this water. Now, in order for me to get this into the spot where it would need to be, which is all the way down at the bottom of the map, where we had a couple of filters basically sorting all the liquid before we send it to wherever it's supposed to go on the colony, well, that would be an awfully long and painful run. So instead, I'm using the Dupe labor method. I have a liquid pump right here filling up a bunch of buffer tanks, and as the buffer tanks get full, I just deconstruct them, and when they're done, we're left with nothing but buckets of liquid. In this case, it's water and polluted water, where the dupes will come by and drop it off at whatever bottle emptier it needs to go to. In the case of polluted water, it comes here. In the case of clean water, it goes here. In other good news, we're almost done cleaning all the brine and salt water that used to fill up this area. Once we are, I'll be able to get rid of this desalinator, all of these buffer tanks, and it'll help clean up some of the piping here. Which leaves me with today's project, which is going to start with, well, a lot of digging. All of this regolith is going to want to fall, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with it yet. I know the top of our media collection area is probably going to be around here, but if I just start digging this up, there's going to be regolith all over the colony, which I suppose I could just sweep then, because it's not hot. I mean, I guess I'm going to have to sweep it one way or the other. Although one thing we're going to have to deal with is there are a few... There you are. Shovels still sitting up in this biome. I've managed to get most of them, transporting them down to our temporary shovel facility, but I definitely don't want these little guys running around the base. So I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for them, so I don't think there's anything left to do other than start to build some scaffolding. Definitely not gonna use sandstone, we'll use igneous rock. And I think this time, since I know I'm gonna be getting rid of all these ladders, I'm actually going to go with 3 high. The advantage of 3 high is once I am done doing whatever we need to do in here, I can then start at the top row, deconstruct it, and then just keep going down. It's a good method for when you know you're going to end up deconstructing all the ladders anyways. Oh, there's another little guy. I wonder how many dupes are going to end up getting stuck today. Another strategy that I'm taking is I'm not digging any of this up yet until they've put in all the ladders that they can. That way, we minimize the chances as much as possible of a dupe getting stuck. I mean, it's still gonna happen. And the sound of the bell means it's time to print our first dupe of the episode. All 3 of the bionic dupes in the pod are not too bad, but I think Stila wins out with the extreme digging booster and only having the negatives of decreased cuisine and agriculture. So welcome to the colony, duplicate number 173, Daiwolkarai. We're going to have such a nice surplus of materials from all of this. All these radiant gas pipes, which are 100 kilos each of copper ore. That's not too shabby. So this is pretty much what I'm doing today. Just watching Dupes dig and build. Nothing too exciting, at least yet. And I spoke too soon. We have a few Dupes trapped here due to a ceiling collapse. So they're going to have to dig themselves out there. Oh, hurry up and get this shovel. I don't actually have a critter drop-off for those little fellas, but I suppose I could. I've just been using wrangles just to be able to identify where they are. But a critter drop-off means I might be able to set it and forget it. Screwy Girl's been falling for quite some time. Don't worry, Screwy Girl, you'll get to the bottom eventually. Well, I suppose there's no time like the present. They've gotten most of the ladders they can. So now I'm just going to queue up one giant dig command over here. And then one giant dig command over here. Should we do a montage? Maybe just for a little bit? It'll take a lot longer on ×1 speed, but I'll shoot for it. Well, that took a month of Sundays. Well, look how nice it looks. Just don't look at all the debris. We'll eventually get to it, but it's definitely not a priority. Oz, what are you doing? Really? This is why we can't have nice things. I was just trying to get some water mopped up. During the course of our mass scaffolding and dig project, we had to print a couple of dupes. In this case, we did end up going with the Stila because of that juicy electrical engineer booster, which means they're going to be able to help out doing all the Engie's tune-ups. So welcome to the colony, duplicate number 174, Parasox TV. Next on the dupe list was this Sonyar, who also had an electrical engineer booster, with the only negatives being decreased husbandry and medicine. That'll be just fine. Welcome to the colony, duplicate number 175, Divine Mango. Next up on the agenda is, well, cleaning up some scaffolding. That shouldn't be too bad, because we did the 3 high rows, but we need to figure out where our spaceport is actually going to sit. The key that you're looking for normally is you want at least 40 to 45 tiles for your rocket program, and even if we don't ever do a rocketry program on this colony, it's still just good practice. So there's 40 there, 45 goes down a little bit. Yeah, so I think this row right here sort of works. It gives us plenty of room up top, without keeping too much atmosphere background on the spaceport itself. I'm also giving the duplicates a little bit of a break. You can see that we're back up to about 50% of our Atmo suits. Thanks to our automated thimble reed farm, we are slowly and steadily getting more reed fiber, cutting into the backlog of worn Atmo suits. But some of you may have noticed during the montage, just mass groups of duplicates just loitering around the barracks, instead of doing something more productive. Well, that was the reason. Oh, well, this did not happen at the right time. We're finally getting a meteor shower. I managed to avoid one the entire time that we were digging. Luckily, it's only a slime meteor shower, but it still comes in a little bit hot. And it doesn't look like it's powerful enough to be able to do any damage. So once it's all done, I'll get everything dug up again. I've also started steel production again, and while I was over here, I realized this is probably my least efficient metal refinery I've ever had. While I do like this huge loop that we're using that keeps the crude oil ready for another batch of the metal refinery, it's the location of things that I don't like. For instance, we get all of our refined carbon over here, but then the duplicants have to manually bring it over to the metal refinery. And I think I did this as a quote-unquote temporary metal refinery and then just never fixed it. Normally I have all my buckets there, but the good thing is I have a lot of duplicant labor, so it's not a big deal. But one of the reasons why I need that steel production is because we need to build a bunch of bunker tiles. And at 100 kilos apiece, this is not going to be cheap. Here we go. Well, that was 10 tons. 2 tons. Oh yeah, we're not going to have enough. But the reason why you want to build bunker tiles is bunker tiles don't care about meteors and will never break. Whereas, especially the copper meteors will definitely start damaging the insulated tile that's protecting the rest of our colony. And I don't have to worry about not having enough materials to make more steel because we have plenty of refined carbon and almost 9 tons of lime. I suppose the limiting factor is going to be the 25 tons of iron ore that we have left. So I should probably queue some of that up. In fact, I'll just queue it up forever as well. But thanks to our wonderful iron volcano, we will never run out of refined iron. Thanks to our hatches, we'll never run out of coal, and thanks to all the eggs, we'll never run out of lime. Yeah, I told you this place was a bit of a mess. We've been dropping the entire space biome pretty much everywhere. It'll get back to nice and neat. It's time to print another duplicate, and I know you only saw 2 duplicates that occurred during the montage, but there was actually 3. And the reason why is because I've managed to catch up with all the YouTube and Patreon member names. So now I'm just printing a dupe and leaving its name. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Well, I'll just join the Patreon and the YouTube just to get my name in the colony. Please do not do that anymore. We're nearing the end of this series and I don't want it to happen where somebody's looking forward to it and end up not being able to join the colony. So I'm probably not going to show you whenever I'm printing new dupes because they're just standard dupes with standard names. But rest assured, you'll see the number in the top left continue to go up. Some of you have been asking about the stats behind how we're doing with the simulation as far as speeds and frames per second. Well, the frames per second aren't that bad, and as long as I play on slow speed, the simulation is mostly rock solid. For instance, right now I'm hitting about 40 to 50 frames per second. Where I'm getting crushed is how long it takes to run one cycle at normal speed. I whipped out the old stopwatch, and we're up to over 10 minutes and 30 seconds for each and every cycle. That's why these videos have been taking so long to record. In an entire hour of gameplay, I'm only getting through 6 cycles. And I can't run at medium or fast speed anymore, because if I do, the duplicates will end up suffocating. It has something to do with the Aaron system and when they remember to breathe or return to a place to be able to breathe. Because what'll happen is the duplicate will come down here, maybe to refill the deodorizers, and they won't realize that they're suffocating until it's too late. Keep up the great work, Rebecca. You're doing great. Now, can you please go not hang out in the carbon dioxide? Thank you. While the duplicates are building that and we're waiting for more steel, I can also start getting rid of a lot of this scaffolding. I will leave this ladder rung under the bunker tiles, but I think the rest of them can go as well. Now it's time to talk a little bit about how we're going to be mining out the meteors. Remember, when meteors hit the bunker tiles, they will inevitably form tiles, like we saw down here at the bottom with the slime meteors. Well, the 3 types of meteors that are bound to hit this planetoid are going to be copper meteors, icy meteors, and slimy meteors. The hottest of which are going to be the copper meteors. When they come down, they will superheat this bunker tile. Additionally, if I were to put robo miners just here on the bottom and a meteor came down and hit this robo miner, it would end up overheating. Even if I were to overlap the robo miners like this, the tiles would form and still end up transferring enough of its thermals quick enough before its neighboring robo miner could dig it out. In times past, what people used to do is set up what they called a sea miner, and it would look something like this. They would then place a little bit of liquid right here in this tile, which would keep the RoboMiner from overheating because they would send a cooling loop through the little bit of liquid sitting on this tile. Well, we don't have to do that anymore. The reason why we don't is because of the conduction panel. We can now keep buildings within a thermal range by just putting a conduction panel over them and running a cooling loop through it. And that's what we're going to be doing today. Now we're going to start off with one RoboMiner over here. We'll put a couple of bunker tiles there, and then we'll also need a conduction panel. I guess we're going to have to use steel for it just because we don't have much of anything else. And that'll be the start of the first one. And then all I have to do is rinse and repeat. Notice that this RoboMiner is going to be able to keep any meteors that hit the top of this tile clear of debris. And that's what I'm going to build going all the way down. The very first RoboMiner is a little different because, and I suppose I need to move this just a smidge closer, but the very first RoboMiner will have a RoboMiner facing this way to help keep this one clear. Now, as far as power goes, I have a large power transformer here that you probably saw me build during the montage, and it powers this one airlock. I also am building another power transformer over here, and in this case, I will be using lead wire just because, well, I don't have much of anything else anymore. Now, in this first few tiles where a meteor could land and form a tile, there's a chance that these two wires would end up melting, because as a reminder, lead's melting point is 327.5. But for the rest of this, it's sitting in a vacuum and it doesn't really matter. I think we'll end up going a little bit higher, say right here. It's easy enough to build, and that way I don't have to put ladders up and down this whole thing. After looking at my designs, I figured that building these ladders now would just make my life easier later. And that way they can do all the work up here they need, and then we can just deconstruct them like we did before. Now you'll notice I'm starting to put in some auto sweepers as well. The auto sweepers will also require a conduction panel because they generate heat and will need to be cooled as well. And then you'll see these automatic dispensers, because that is how we're going to get all the debris that forms back down to our colony by the use of the wonderful bucket brigade. And the way that works is all of the debris in this area is going to be taken from this auto sweeper and put into this automatic dispenser, because it's going to say collect everything without it being sweep only. So there'll be a big old pile of debris here, which this auto sweeper is then going to take and drop off into this automatic dispenser. Note that this auto sweeper cannot reach this dispenser. So all the way down, auto sweeper after auto sweeper will just keep moving the debris down, where we'll eventually just end up dropping it or putting it into a conveyor loader and shipping it off somewhere. Next up is the cooling loop. As you can see, I've put a giant ring through here. All these pipes are made of igneous rock because, well, I don't have much else. And the polluted water that we end up putting in it is going to be chilled naturally through this brine tank. Now you might be thinking that's an awfully big cooling loop to just be chilled by that brine tank. Well, there's going to be two sources of heat. One being the meteors, where the meteor, when it forms in the tiles, will then transfer its heat to the bunker tiles, but then the bunker tiles, they will spread the heat throughout all of those tiles. The next source of heat is going to be from the machines themselves. You can see a RoboMiner generates 2000 DTUs, which is the same as the auto sweeper. Taking that into account, and the fact that you only get meteors every, 10 to 20 cycles, I'm not too worried about it here. We may occasionally see these bunker tiles get too hot, and there's a potential for some polluted water to burst. We'll end up crossing that bridge when we get there, which you then might ask, well, why are we trying to keep the bunker tiles cool anyways? Well, when we look at our list of meteors, remember, we have icy meteors. I want that ice, but if the bunker tiles are all superheated to 200 to 300 degrees because of the copper meteors, that ice is going to come down, form into a tile, and then just instantly melt, create a giant mess, etc., etc. Which that's also a good point to mention, is the fact that the icy meteors are also going to help keep the bunker tiles cool. So it might look crazy now, but it should work just fine. Now to fill it, I'm going to find the wonderful bottle drainer and just put it right there. And then I'll enable auto bottle and just have the dupes drop off a bunch of polluted water. So if you're wondering why I'm doing the 50-50 split here, it's because yes, we're going to have to keep all of this equipment cool, but as I mentioned, we're also going to need to keep the tiles nice and cool as well. In an effort to try to improve the speed of my steel production, I have added a conveyor loader and auto sweeper here that'll automatically drop off all the lime and refined carbon to this point. Then I have an auto sweeper here that will load it into the metal refinery. So the only thing that's still manual is iron ore to the metal refinery, which isn't too big of a deal, especially when there's already over 2 tons sitting here. And that way, just like Jack of all Norse did, they are much more likely to be able to run back-to-back recipes of iron to steel. Normally that's not even a necessity because I'd have such a large surplus of steel anyways, but this project itself has taken 20 tons of steel and removed it pretty quickly. Another thing that compounded that is the fact that I had turned steel production off for a few hundred cycles while we were concentrating on other things that I could have used the duplicate labor on. But now that steel production's going, we will eventually get ahead of the curve and I won't have to worry about steel anymore. I'm still finding shovels everywhere, which is sort of exciting. Why did we drop that one all the way down there? Can we please not let that little guy into the colony? And it's because some of the eggs, like here's one right here, I need to catch them before they hatch and bring them down here. But since we have some time and available labor, I figured we could start the low priority sweep down here. And I don't think I have any place that'll store critter eggs. So if I ever see something that is not able to sweep, never mind. Apparently I do have something on the colony that will do sweeps. Okay, I think I have found them all, hopefully, because the last thing I need is a shovel running inside of a thermal aqua tuner chamber. All said and done though, we ended up with 13 shovels and a smattering of eggs here. There's 5 here, 5 here, and a couple here. So who knows where they are in their life cycle and whether or not some of these voles will end up laying more eggs. Progress on our meteor collections, it's going. I've got some of them completed, and I'm also just waiting for another meteor shower so I can capture it. The cooling loop is also getting full. This one's pretty static because I haven't been able to close it off yet, but at the minimum I'm trying to get to the end here, so at least I can show you it working. But considering we're still running at around 10 minutes 15 seconds per cycle, this is going to take me quite a long time. In the interest of said time, I'm also ordering rebuilds out of all the conduction panels. They themselves don't have an overheat temperature, and the only thing they really need to do is, well, conduct the thermals from the cooling loop. So iron should be good here. I'd love to be able to get away with not using steel in other places, at least until I have my surplus back, but I think this is about it. I could use insulated tiles or the bunker tiles that are holding the robo-miners, but I would be worried about a meteor hitting them and then end up breaking them. And while that wouldn't in itself be that big of a deal, it's definitely not a practice that I would want to get into. Considering after this whole thing's done, I'm going to remove all of these ladders and the dupes will never need to get up here again. Hopefully. Another thing I've done in anticipation of the cooling requirement is I've raised the hydro sensor that was controlling this liquid pump to this level here. That way we'll have a much larger amount of brine to be able to dump all the heat that the polluted water is going to pick up on its way through all of the machines and the bunker tiles once meteors start hitting. The theory is that much mass worth of brine water and it being replenished all the time by the cool salt slush geyser will be able to absorb all of that heat without much of an issue. If it ends up being an issue, well, then we add another steam turbine and thermal aqua tuner solution. We are finishing off the right-sized bunker tiles, that way meteors can't get in. I'll start building all the meteor collection on this side in the background while I'm doing future projects, but at the minimum with the bunker tiles here, I won't have to worry about meteors coming in. But the cooling loop on the left side is complete. I am going to test our bucket brigade though. I just selected everything, which now that I think about it is going to be an issue because the duplicates will try to bring everything over to the buckets. So I might have to do sweep only, and then every once in a while just do a giant sweep here. What's a better way for me to do this? It'd be really nice if this machine had one of those buttons where I could disable manual use. I suppose I could just stop the dupes from being able to get up there, and then I wouldn't have to worry about it. They'll be able to finish this side over here, or I use conveyor loaders instead of automatic dispensers. I suppose for now I'll just do the simple thing and not allow duplicates to go up through there. With all those ladders gone, we can now test our bucket brigade. For now, I have everything being collected at this end by this auto sweeper that'll put everything inside the conveyor loader and it just drops it here. Eventually, what I'd like is for all this material to go through a debris chiller. In fact, maybe that debris chiller system could also be where the cooling potential from this loop comes from. I don't know, that's a future Echo problem for now. We're not going to allow any dupes in or passing up through the door. And to turn on the bucket brigade, all I do is click all standard and then copy and paste it through all the dispensers. And there we go. In this case, igneous rock from the ladders is slowly going to be transferred all the way down. And then this conveyor loader is going to say everything. I've always loved using bucket brigades. Oh, it would really have helped if I would have remembered the last auto sweeper. Now I gotta build a ladder again. Look, it's been 2 days of recording. The occasional mistake is okay. With the missing auto sweeper in, the bucket brigade continues. Now I just have to wait for a meteor shower, which sort of reminds me of how long does it take for a watched pot to boil. I know it's the same amount of time, but at over 10 minutes per cycle, please someone send help. It did not take the bucket brigade long at all to clean up everything here. The bottleneck, of course, is going to be the conveyor loader that is limited by the 20 kilo package that a rail can hold. But once again, you go a decent amount of time in between meteor showers. If meteors were constantly falling, this system would not work as well, especially considering the cooling loop. But in addition to the cooling loop, I'd have to separate these into different circuits because more of the auto sweepers and robo miners would be working at the same time. So it's time to play the waiting game. I'd throw you another montage, but just watching dupes pick up things is probably not the most enjoyable thing for a montage. I was thinking that maybe if I left the game open in the star map, so the simulation wouldn't necessarily have to show me all the dupes moving and everything, that it would work a little bit quicker and the dupes would not end up suffocating. But as you can see, it's still happening. Oh, such sweet release. We have a meteor. It's finally going to happen here in a couple of cycles, depending on how long it takes to get there. Be back in a minute. Finally, here comes the pain, and it is the icy meteor. So we're getting a bunch of snow. We're still getting some melt, which is unfortunate. I suppose it still highlights the beauty of the system, though, especially when it's one of the crushed ice meteors. This side, we're just going to pretend like this side isn't here, okay? Sounds good? Alright. Well, this episode took entirely too long to record, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. I'm thinking next time we'll be continuing the asteroid miner and maybe a debris chiller? I'm not sure. What would you like to see as we're nearing the finale of this series? Let me know in the comments below. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.